Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Behind the Scenes. I'm BJ Lisko filling in for Joe Danyi this week, and we've got Josh Roman from Mindrocket Recording down at the studio with us here. Man, thanks for coming down.
Thanks for having me.
So give me a little bit of a background on, how did you start Mindrocket? Kind of how did you get into becoming a recording engineer and producer?
Oh, man, that's a long story.
Yeah. That's all right.
We got time.
We get time.
My buddy John Halumic from the Infidels, he and John Corey, the drummer for the Infidels, bought a 4-track in, I don't know, maybe 1984. And I would help him and monkey around with that, and once in a while borrow it for the weekend. And I'm like, I really love doing this. It's a cool thing, even when there was no technology, nothing, like there is today. And that just kind of set me on the path. I got into a car accident in 1991 and got a decent amount of money to be able to just start buying some gear. Mm-hmm. And was playing in the Heretics at the time, so just took all that gear and started the studio, basically.
Sort of how difficult is it for folks, I guess, to transition out of? I mean, obviously, I think most people that own recording studios have a background in music or played music at some point. But kind of how challenging is it to go from, sort of the performance aspect to kind of the recording aspect?
It's challenging if you want to be in the band. I'm not a fan of recording my own band. Mm-hmm. There's so much involved with paying attention to the recording aspect that the playing aspect maybe suffers, at least on my end, because I'm not that great. But when I played in a band, that was my musical outlet. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. But when I started delving more into recording and working with other people, that became my musical outlet and expression, not the band thing. Mm. So it wasn't a hard transition because I was ready to make my way out of the band and more into just focusing on helping other bands.
Mm-hmm. So what sort of, what kind of artists, what sort of genres are you kind of recording at Mindrocket? You're pretty much all over the place, aren't you?
I am all over the place. I do a little bit of rap, not as much as I did years ago. Americana, stoner rock, metal, punk rock, a lot of punk rock.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a preference? Is there, is there a genre you like recording more than others, perhaps?
I would say no, because I listen to all those things. So, no, as long as the band's into what they're doing, I'm into helping them do their thing the best that they can.
So, I mean, how often do you get kind of, I mean, I'm sure it sort of runs the gamut, and I'm sure you've been in it this long enough you can kind of pick and choose kind of who you want to record and stuff at this point too. But I mean, how often do you get sort of the newbies that are kind of woefully unprepared as to the ones that are that come in and kind of have all their stuff together?
I'm not to the pick and choose level yet. I still take jobs because I like money and need to feed the family and all that kind of thing. But right. If you're spending money, you should be kind of prepared, But I once in a while, and it's less frequent now, someone will come in that's not so prepared, and it just shows on the end result. It's not tight and things like that. But just be prepared is the thing I could say the most about having a good recording session.
So how is kind of technology affected the way you approach things too? Because I mean, now it seems like everybody has some kind of home recording something or other, or they've made kind of software. They made it kind of easier for people to do these sort of at-home recordings. But I mean, how much has that kind of bled over into what you do? And also, how has that kind of affected your business?
Almost 50% of what I do is mixing other bands, not even from the area, but bands that have heard of me through other things that I've done. And a lot of those people have recorded that stuff at home or in their practice studio. So since the technology has evolved greatly in the past 20, 15 years, I'm able to change the business to not just recording bands, but, taking the things that people do at home and mixing it for them. And the cool thing about bands that record at home is they don't feel the pressure of the time. Because they're not on the clock, so a lot of times that stuff comes in sounding really good because they spent all the time that they needed to on it, getting in and rushing it and throwing it out.
Mm-hmm. So, and how much of what you do is sort of the old school recording? And I say old school, but the put mics in front of the amps, put mics in front of the drums, as opposed to now there seems to be like a plug-in for anything, and kind of any sound you sort of want or any kind of amp. kind of on a computer, and you can sort of dial it in, and that sort of software will kind of mimic that kind of technology. But what kind of percentage wise is like are you doing kind of the old school recording versus kind of this all this new technology or newer technology?
Oh, probably 75% of the old way and 25 of the new way, maybe. I like amp simulators, but I also like guitar amps. So I always, if it's a guitar band, we'll always use the band's amps unless they're kind of crummy or whatnot. And then we'll find one of mine or a sim to do it. But I like combining a simulator with an amp. It usually sounds amazing. I can't say I'm not a big fan of all simulator recordings, but I feel like there's something missing sometimes if I don't have an amp or two in that mix.
Like as far how far is that technology kind of come? I mean, you're obviously at seeing it a lot more often, but I guess I know at first when they started doing that, like it wasn't like you had the simulators and you had whatever, but like you said, you could kind of tell a clear difference between the two. It was like this kind of like
yes.
How far has that gotten better? Since the start. I mean, I guess how good is that technology now?
Well, rather than using computers to simulate the circuitry of an amp, now they're using computers to actually capture that amp. You could have a JCM 800 mic'd up with an SM57 or a 421 recorded in a studio in California, and then that impulse becomes the amp that you're using for that recording. So it has come a long way as far as that goes.
Now, obviously, you engineer a lot of stuff out of the studio. Do you like produce for bands and stuff too if they ask you? Or
if asked, and I'll always I'm not afraid to say maybe you guys should try this, and maybe that's not working. But I try not to throw myself into that too much unless I'm asked. I like to get the most out of the band. How they feel they should sound. I try to make them sound the way they want to sound.
Would that be something you think you would enjoy doing, like kind of putting your 2 cents in on stuff, or other people's recording, or is that sort of like kind of weird to sort of overstep? I mean, I know there's some guys that they
have to put their mark. They
love to throw their weight around, you know what I mean, and kind of put their own stamp on things. When you look at those old producers, but yeah, where do you stand?
Again, if I'm asked, I would definitely help out in a production aspect, but I do like to kind of stay out of the way and just let that band do their thing. Because a lot of times if you're coming in and you're paying a studio guy to record, you're probably pretty well rehearsed. And with the advent of the home recording, people spend a lot more time at home polishing demos. I'll hear demos and I'll be like, geez, that sounds so good now. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? But that technology has helped a lot of bands kind of hone their sound before they get to me. So sometimes the sessions, I'm amazed how great stuff sounds and how prepared they were. And it always comes from that.
Going back to your very kind of start in music, I mean, what made you pick up a guitar? What was who was the catalyst?
Kiss.
Kiss?
Yeah. Yeah, Ace Frehley was the catalyst, I suppose. I've since listened to everything else and not much Kiss anymore, but Kiss was definitely as a young lad, 1977-ish, Kiss was all there was. So that kind of what started it for me.
So is Kiss done?
I don't know, man. They're done this week or this month, but I saw their farewell tour in the 90s, so we'll see how it goes.
That's what I said. Yeah, I think I've seen a couple farewell tours for them. I saw them, in the 90s, and then there was another one, another round in like the early 2000s. It seems like every few years. Like I said, I think Dee Snider said he'll believe it when he sees the bodies in the Kiss coffins.
Yeah, it's hard to. I'm sure it's hard to maintain that, and as you get older, maybe you don't want to maintain that anymore. But it's such an income for those guys, and it seems like it's still fun for them. So
to me, it seems sort of like maybe a marketing ploy that Kiss. They're everything's kind of a marketing ploy when it comes to Gene Simmons and Kiss. You know what I mean? But yeah, my prediction is that I'll give it a couple months and then you're gonna see them. Like they might not be on festivals this year, but when it rolls back around again and all those big festivals around the world, like they're gonna get huge offers to come out and do it, even if it's just one-offs. And they'll be like, oh, well, we said we were just retiring from touring.
Right. We're retired from flying out in the audience, but we're still playing on stage.
right. Or but no, I'm a Kiss fan too. So yeah, I wish they'd bring back those Kiss conventions. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah,
where they had all the merch and stuff, and then they played acoustic and whatnot. But we'll talk a little bit too about your kind of your more a little bit about your music background and kind of like touring. I mean, any kind of notable shows or tours or kind of periods as far as you as a performer.
With the Heretics, I toured in Europe for 2 months in 1990, 1991, from the end of November to the middle of January. Came back the day before the Gulf War started. That was probably the biggest, most extensive touring thing I've done. Other than that, I played in King Mother in the early 2000s. Didn't tour, though. Went to Brooklyn and recorded at Hugh Poole's studio, Excello. And that's about it.
Any notable like support slots or anything in the Heretics, or any notable kind of touring stories?
A lot of good touring stories. That fun hasn't been topped since then. Yeah. You know, just we were all good friends in a van in Europe for 2 months, so you can imagine, you know how.
Hey, this is Kellen with Youngstown Studio. Entrepreneurs, artists, and entertainers of all types drop by our place often, and we sometimes get the question, what all does Youngstown Studio do? Well, I'm here to show you. Youngstown Studio is a full-service podcasting and interview studio. We feature creatives from around the Mahoning Valley, rent our space to podcasters, distribute shows to popular podcasting channels, and we help tell the stories of hardworking people in our community. Youngstown Studio produces the Business Spotlight television show Behind the Scenes with Joe Danyi. Every Saturday at 11 a.m. on WBCB, The Valley CW, we highlight a different Mahoning Valley business. We featured everything from manufacturing plants and 3D printing facilities to local entertainment venues, breweries, recording studios, and more. Youngstown Studio is also home to Youngstown Studio Marketing. We create and design social media graphics, videos, reels, and manage and promote the online presence of Mahoning Valley businesses of all types. We rebrand local businesses and design their logos, signage, merchandise, and more. We design event posters, concert flyers, print advertisements, newsletters, and anything and everything in between when it comes to graphic design. We record live performances here in our studio for online streaming or to help promote your music or upcoming concerts. We write, record, and produce radio and podcast advertisements. Need a voiceover, or do you want to record an audiobook? We can do that. We also handle the marketing and promotions of our parent company, Youngstown Computer, the Valley's IT company. If your business needs marketing help, if you want to record a podcast, or if you have a business idea you want to get off the ground, call Youngstown Studio today.
Well, we're going to get into our video here. Like I said, I was out this past weekend, and you guys were doing a Mindrocket session there. Before we get into this, describe a little bit of that too, kind of how that kind of came about, because a number of different bands have sort of utilized that and come down and you know, they play a couple songs and it gets filmed there, and then you do a kind of a quick mix on it, and it gets produced, the video and everything gets thrown up online. But yeah, kind of how did that all come to be?
Just through a chance meeting with Jimmy Martin at a show one night, and he was already recording the show and going out and talking to bands, and he had a little podcast, and I said, well, it'd be sweet if you can, maybe we could do a live thing from the studio versus you going out and doing it from shows, and you could talk to them there. We could, it's like a cross-promotional fun time for everybody situation. So there's no profit in it. We do it just for our promotion and the promotion of bands, and I love doing them. We're probably close to 70 bands now at this point.
Nice.
We took 2 years off, almost 2 years off. Jimmy had to move to Missouri for GM, obviously. If he wanted to keep a job, he had to leave. So that slowed us down a bit, but we just started back up again this past week when you were there.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll keep them rolling again.
Yeah, cool. Well, all right. Well, let's get in here. We'll get into the video, and yeah, anything. But yes, you're over in Western PA in West Middlesex.
Right. Right next door to Palumbo's Meat Market. Okay, that's the control room. That's a 1976 MCI 428 that was modified by Don Garvin in New Brighton, PA in the 80s to be a little clearer and less noisy and more transient response than the original 428s. So that's kind of the main backbone there, and then the rack is just compressors and preamps and things that I like to use for my sessions.
Yeah, it seems like there's when you get a recording, I mean, you can go down some serious rabbit holes as far as gear goes.
Yeah, my Sweetwater credit card can attest to that rabbit hole. And I don't think I'm going to stop anytime soon. I love buying gear, and I try to make at least one big purchase a year, and then small maintenance and microphones and other stuff, throughout the year as well.
Yeah, and you have a cool space there too. I mean, it's just it's relaxed, it's cool, it's easy to go and record, it's easy to set stuff up. It's some places are. I've been to other studios where it's not quite like that, and it's sort of. I guess I don't want to say more rigid, but a little bit more like it's not as comfortable, I should say.
Yeah. My old studio was in the basement of my house. It was a really hard load in. There was no natural light. And when I decided I was going to move, all I wanted was an easy load in and some natural light. Mm-hmm. And as far as the comfort goes, the natural light's actually covered right there because we were doing the video. But I spend so much time there. I want to be comfortable there, and I know if a band feels comfortable, they're going to perform a lot better than they would if they were, felt rigid and confined and stuff like that.
And so, what gear do you have kind of in studio too? I mean, some of this is probably the band because this was a post Ramon was there for a Mindrocket session. But yeah, what sort of in-house gear do you have?
All those amps that you're looking at against the back wall, and also a Laney VH100R. I have another Vox amp that's not in the shot, and I think that's all for amplifiers. I'm trying to think of what I might have at home. And I have a P-Bass that I keep there, if someone would need it, and a Gibson Melody Maker guitar that's mine that I still play, but album just used it last week. So my space is small, so there's not a lot of room to hoard gear there. I try to keep enough there to be functional and still have space for whatever people may be moving in, for the session.
Kind of how did you, I mean, as far as sort of, getting into recording, I mean, was it just kind of, I guess, how do you get good at it? Is it just a whole lot of trial and error, a whole lot of hours?
It is. I feel like I'm still getting good at it. I haven't stopped trying to perfect my craft, which is probably the reason that I still do this and still have bands coming in, because I try to get better constantly.
Yeah, so is there anything that you've recorded in the past that you kind of go back and listen to and like, man, that could be better? And like, do you ever go back and like tweak old recordings?
Sometimes for fun I do. But yeah, I think that's the part of the learning process is I never listen to anything and say, man, that's perfect. There's always something I'm like, man, I wish I would have done this with the bass different, or, the vocals are too loud or something like that. But as time moves on, I've found where certain pockets of things should sit and how to make them sit in that pocket. So, it's definitely an ever-changing learning experience.
Has sort of the way that people kind of consume music and listen to music too, has that affected you at all as far as like the whole, I mean, there's a lot of people use Spotify and all kind of the streaming services, and those are real convenient, but they're obviously not the best sounding sometimes too, and depending on what people are listening to, but yeah, I mean, has streaming and all that kind of affected how you approach things or how you record things at all?
It really doesn't. Although a lot of stuff gets streamed, a lot of the bands I work with still put stuff out on vinyl. So I shoot at a higher sampling rate than CD, usually 88.2 kilohertz, which is twice CD. I shoot for a good sound no matter what. It is going to get dumbed down to an MP3, and most people are going to listen to it off their phone on some earbuds. But I always try to go for it. I just mixed this week already. I have to send it out to the band. I sent it to Jimmy to send to the editor, but it came out really well.
And how tough is it when you get everybody in a room? Because obviously, if these guys were probably doing their own record there or whatever, if they were doing just individual kind of studio songs, so this is a live performance, but if they were doing it the other way, they would probably record part at a time, record the drums, stack the bass, add the bass, add the guitars, kind of piece by piece. How challenging is it to do it this way? To kind of record everything off the floor like this.
It's a little bit scary. It was at first, but I've again just through time I've gotten better at doing that too. Everything's got to be right that first time. That's it. If it's not, then something's going to suffer, and then you have to come up with a bag of tricks to figure out why you can't hear the bass, or it's all bass, or volume is a real big thing. As long as the band, their volume's balanced out in the room, usually the sound that comes out is also balanced. If one guy's too loud, there's 8 to 10 drum microphones, it's going to come through everything. So if everything's balanced out, it's usually nice.
So talk a little bit about this, about your board too, because I think it's fascinating that like depending on the board, like different boards have different kind of sounds and different sort of warmth to them, and which is you kind of wouldn't necessarily think that, but yeah, I mean, kind of what sort of difference does a board like that make, or does a kind of a really good old school board like that kind of have on the final product?
That console, the MCI brand in 1977. I think 75% of the #1 hit records that year were done on MCI consoles. So at one point they were a pretty awesome beast. That thing weighs 500 pounds. It has a lot of transformers in it, which affect the sound and kind of give the sound like a weight to it. A transformerless console maybe doesn't have that sort of weight. The circuitry on it is very basic and very simple. The EQs are simple. If you take one of the channel strips out to do any work on them, repair work or anything like that, it's a very simple circuit versus maybe a newer console that has a million parts on it. They're harder to work on, and I'm not going to say they sound better or worse, but there's something to be said for that simplicity as far as a big open sound goes.
So you're recording this here digitally. I'm sure is most of what you do digital. Do you ever do analog at all?
I don't have any analog machines at all. Well, I have one reel-to-reel, but no, everything I do goes to Pro Tools. All my analogs in the front end. A lot of the compression that I would use for recordings comes out of my rack. Rather than use a plug-in, you do what's called a hardware insert, where you can, within Pro Tools, send to and from, and then just put that insert on. Like, I want this compressor on the kick drum, put it on, and you're off to the races.
How far has digital kind of come to recording wise? Because I remember when Pro Tools, when you first kind of hear about this stuff, and when I first started recording, probably in like the late '90s, you could tell the difference between digital and analog. Like there was a pretty big gap. That gap isn't really there, like, to the point where I can't tell the difference anymore.
No, it's super hard to tell the difference. As long as you have good converters, which I think that's early on. Digital analog to digital converters or digital to analog converters weren't in the state that they are now, and even cheaper converters on even a budget sound card sound way better than almost like the ADATs did in the early 90s when I started recording on those.
Yeah, I mean, have you did you ever do like a lot of real recording at any point, or did you have a lot of that? Or
only in bands that I was in. I had cassette 8-track and cassette 4-tracks, and the first two bands I did were on cassette 8-tracks, and they actually came out as releases. And then I bought an ADAT and a Little Mackie console in about 93, I think, whatever year they came out, because for $3,000 it was a digital 8-track, which is amazing. It's 8 tracks. It's clean. It sounds so much better than cassette. That technology, within the course of, I can't remember when I sold my first ADAT, but that $3,500 ADAT got me about $150. So the
Yeah.
the technology changed, and that became something that no one wanted or cared about because it started moving right into the computer, and that thing wasn't even an option.
This episode was brought to you by Youngstown Computer, the Valley's technology company. We appreciate the loyalty and all you have shown us over the years, and it's our promise to serve all the technology needs of the Valley. Call 330-259-7278. We have both home and business services available. Everything from repair, installations, and new equipment. You can improve your Wi-Fi and have technology serve you better. Call 330-259-7278. Or you can schedule your appointment right now on youngstowncomputer.com and look for the red Book Now button.
So who are some of the more notable artists, I guess, that you've had kind of over the years? Maybe not even notable, but just some of your kind of favorites that you've recorded throughout the years.
Well, the Turbo Lovers are one of my favorites.
Thanks.
Asleep, I did a few different EPs with them. I always thought they were super good. Rebreather, I love. Album, those are two heavier bands. I really like them a lot. East and West was a band from, I can't even pinpoint where they're from, but they're country girls, and they have since moved to Missouri and Virginia, but they did an amazing album. I did a Mindrocket session with the Vindies that was pretty fun. I like almost everything, so if a band is into what they're doing, I'm into them too. Yeah.
So how can people get a hold of you if they want to come record, or if they want to just stop by and check out the studio?
Josh Roman on Facebook's probably the easiest way. The studio number, I'm sure, is listed as well, which is just my cell number. So that'd be the best way. Text that number, call that number, or hit me up on one of the medias.
All right. So anything coming up, next year that you're kind of excited about recording?
I'm working on a double. It's not a double album, but the band Album is doing a sort of thrashier side of album, and the B side is more of a punkier side of album. When I met those guys, they were in a pop punk band, and this isn't so pop punky, but it's going to be different for those guys. That's an exciting one, and I'm working with a band called Two Hands from Cleveland that I met with during a Mindrocket session like a year and a half ago, and we hit it off real well that day, and had always talked about doing something, and I'm going to start something with them in January as well.
Awesome, man. Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming out,
Thanks so much, man.
Youngstowncomputer.com for when a computer issue arises. Don't panic, just have our phone number handy. 330-259-7278. That's 330-259-7278 for all your IT needs.